Hello and welcome to Cookery with Mason Storm. In this video we'll be looking at making some pumpkin pie. This is an old family recipe of mine. We call it Grandma Lois's pumpkin pie, and it is very delicious. It is a custard type pumpkin pie, and I'll just walk you through the instructions on how to make it. It's fairly easy, so just follow along. So first we have some evaporated milk. We have our can of pumpkin. This is real pumpkin. It's not pumpkin pie pumpkin. It's real pumpkin. And we have 1 cup of white sugar and 1 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 teaspoon of cloves, 3 teaspoons of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of ginger, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 4 eggs. With our pie plate size, we get 2 pies out of this. If you have a smaller pie plate, you might get 3 or 4. Now, when it comes to making a good pie, it's important to get the crust right, because a pie is really made up of 2 things. It's made up of the pie crust and the pie filling. And the pie crust, it's kind of the base. It kind of holds everything all together. In this case, this situation, the pie crust cooks slower than the pie filling. So because of this, we're going to have to do what's known as blind bake the crust, which is essentially a form of pre-cooking the crust to ensure that when the pie is in the oven for its final cooking tenure, that the pie filling and the pie crust are ready at the same time. And in many recipes, this is kind of necessary. Each family will have its own special recipe for doing their pie crust. And the more you're familiar with it, the more you kind of understand how long it takes to cook or whatever. So you're able to kind of plan around that. But when you're first making a pie with a new recipe, it can be a little bit weird, not really knowing how long it's going to take to cook the actual pie. But with experience, you can kind of figure that out quite a bit more. I'll see if I can put a video up on my mom's secret recipe for making pie crust, because it's quite good. She makes a very good pie crust. So part of the blind baking, after she rolls it out and has it stretched out to the right amount, is what's known as docking the crust, which is essentially a technique of once she's got it kind of trimmed around here, she kind of folds it into itself to kind of make the top of the crust a little bit thicker, and that really helps with the pre-baking process. It kind of gives a nice lip to the pie. Kind of prevents it from kind of withering away during the cooking process or kind of popping out. So just kind of a bit of a fold, and then she does this V technique very gently around the entire outer perimeter of the pie. And this really gives it a nice aesthetic look to the pie, as well as being functional and reinforcing the upper layer to ensure proper blind baking procedures. Once the entire perimeter is completed, a fork will be used and puncture the bottom of the pie crust, stabbing it multiple times before inserting parchment paper into the bottom of the pie. The parchment paper acts as kind of a barrier between the pie weights and the pie crust, and it's important to crumple up the parchment paper, because then it will have no corners, no creases that would prevent the pie weights from connecting to the pie. So no pockets, no deformities will occur. As for pie weights, my mom has been using the same beans for who knows how many years, but they seem to work good. They also make ceramic pie weights that I think would probably work out pretty good. Haven't used them before though. And then into the oven we go, 425 Fahrenheit, 13 minutes. Then once we pull it out, we remove our beans from the pie. We just have a little strainer here and just kind of dump them in. Then we put the pie back into the oven and cook it for another 5 minutes. And by the time we're done doing that, the pie crust is nice and ready. and then we won't have any type of issues having the pie filling not being cooked or burning the crust. It's every oven's different. You might have to play around with the settings a little bit, but I think just having a general ballpark idea that, you know, pre-cooking it is generally the way to go. Now we will beat the eggs and combine the ingredients. The evaporated milk gets added last, so after the egg is beaten, mix all the ingredients together, then add the evaporated milk, then mix it some more. Mixing of the custard is not terribly difficult, but you can use a mixer, either stand or hand mixer, if you don't want to whisk it like I did in the video. It's perfectly okay. Now that I've just about finished the mixing process, we'll be able to move on to the next phase, in which we dump the pie filling into the pies. Now that the pies are completely done in the pre-baking process. So we can lower the oven's temperature to 350 degrees because we're going to cook them for half an hour. But it's pretty straightforward, so we'll just divide the pie filling into the two crusts. And the next big hurdle is telling when the pie is ready. Now there are two main methods of telling when a custard pie like this is ready. One is the jiggle method, in which the pie is sitting in the oven, you jiggle it a bit, see how it jiggles. And the other method is the cross method. I'm going to show you how to do both of them, because then you're twice as likely to get it right. Moving in with the hand cam, we can take a look at our two pies. We have the one on the left and the one on the right. The one on the right is more done than the one on the left. If you're looking at the way it's jiggling right now, the one on the left is jiggling like crazy, and the one on the right here, we jiggle it and it doesn't do as much. Both of them aren't ready, but the one on the right is a lot closer than the one on the left. It's not necessarily the easiest thing to see in the oven, but I mean, it's basically still a liquid. It hasn't solidified at all. But here we are a few minutes later, and the pies are done. And there's our little cross into it. Now the way that the cross cut way works is that if you cut into it, like you cut your cross, and it just kind of folds back into itself like nothing, that means it's not ready yet. But when you cut it and it is done, it kind of stays where it is, because it's not a liquid anymore. But anyway, that's pumpkin pie. Stay awesome.